Hello, everybody, and welcome to The View from the Top. We've got people coming in from all over the world. We've got Ray Abbott coming in, a good friend of the show. We've got Sarah Leclerc Shirt coming in from Florida. We've got Ian Darlington coming in from Eugene, Oregon. People are coming in from all over the world. We've got Marcel Mulderij. He's actually backstage with us. He's one of our guests on the show today. We've got loads of people coming in. And it is such an important show today. I mean, today, let's face it, is a very, very somber day. Today is 9/11. Unbelievably, it's actually the 23rd anniversary. I mean, gosh, where did the years go? But on a day like this, it is a day for reflection, and it's a day of thinking how things that go on in the wider world actually also impact us from a personal point of view and from a business point of view. And so today we're going to be discussing, on this somber day, we're going to be discussing how geopolitics, the events that go on, that we see on our evening news around the world, how they impact us in our day-to-day role. And I'm super excited that we have backstage with us, we have Marcel Mulderij and Pauline of Voerman Group, who do an incredible industry update every month. And they're going to be talking a bit about the industry updates and what's going on. And we've got Benivo's very own Amir Pintow, who's going to be talking about how that all links in from a technology perspective, and how, and also how Voerman and Benivo work together. So a really, fascinating stuff. We've also got our change maker for the week. We've got Marie Butler from Wood Group with us all the way from Houston, Texas. So we've got a great show lined up for you today. Now, you know how it works, everybody. Join in the comments box, join in the conversation, write in the comments box, tell us who you are, where you are, what's going on. And as the conversation goes on, please do, join in. And we've got Bindu Namaste from a very festive India. She's saying, oh, by the way, I should say, of course, we've got CPE codes. So if you do want your CPE codes, you want your credits, then here they are. So you might want them from Worldwide ERC, and many thanks to our good friends at Worldwide ERC. Those are your GMS or CRP credits. Or you might want your HRCI or your SHRM credits. And again, many thanks to our good friends at Rocket Mortgage who help us get those credits. So that's this week. By the way, I should also tell you that we are now on Spotify as well. So you can watch the show live on, as you are indeed, on LinkedIn. You can catch it on LinkedIn. You can catch it on the Benivo website, but also you can download it as a podcast from Spotify. So if you're interested, we'll put that in the comments and you can get the link. Here we go. So just go to Spotify and you can watch us on that as well. And if you're listening to us on Spotify, then do hope you are enjoying your show. I saw Richard Majewski's in the audience. I'm just going to give a shout out to, he's very heavily involved with SABA, the service accommodation organization, and they have regular meetings. I think they've got one coming up in just about a week's time or 2 weeks' time in London. If you're interested, do reach out to Richard. I'm sure he'll tell you all about that if you're interested in this service accommodation market. What about next week? Well, next week, we've got a fascinating show for you called That Was Then, This Is Now. And our very special guest is Pradeep Sethlur from Capgemini, one of the most substantial and innovative programs in our industry. And he's going to be talking about how they have completely transformed their global mobility program. And we at Benivo have been working very much in partnership with them to provide a technology platform to do that. And I think you're going to find it fascinating about how one of the biggest and brightest and best original thinkers in our industry has radically transformed mobility at this very major company. And some of the very interesting analytics that they're now looking at, which perhaps nobody else has been looking at in the same way before. I won't say any more about it yet. You'll have to tune in next week and you'll find out all about it. Anyway, talking about finding out about things, what's been going on in the wonderful world of global mobility over the last 7 days. Let's have a look with our regular breaking news update. So there we have it. Loads of people have been promoted. Loads of people have got new jobs. Congratulations to you all. Yeah, the Saba details, that's there. 26th September at the other house in South Kensington. So for anybody who is London or UK based and wants to go along, contact Richard for details about that. But congratulations to everybody. But also, I know a lot of people out there are actively looking at the moment. That was the subject of our show last week. But the good news is there's also loads of jobs out there, and we've promoted some of those jobs that we found out about on that breaking news video. If you have got a job that you want to fill, then send us a note and we'll try and promote your job next week. Also, if you've been promoted or you've got a new job, then again, send us a note and we'll try and make sure we give you a shout out. Right. Let's get into the meat of our discussion today. We're going to be talking about the geopolitics of global mobility. And to give us an overview as we move into this, we do, as ever, have with us the wonderful Julia Onslow-Cole from Fragment, who's going to be telling us all about her take on what is going on in the geopolitics of global mobility. So everybody, you know how it works. Please hit the heart button, hit the like button, hit the applause button, and let's welcome to our stage Julia Onslow-Cole. Hey, Julia, how are you doing?
Very well, thanks.
Good. Yeah, and you're in the UK at the moment, but you're off traveling this week. So tell us a bit about that.
Oh, yes. I'm going to the IBA conference in Mexico City tomorrow.
So that's the International Bar Association.
Mm-hmm. Yes, yes. So be exciting.
Okay, so you'll be at the top of the world, almost literally up there.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, tell us a little bit about the geopolitics of global mobility.
Yeah, thanks, Brian. Well, I think everyone would agree that geopolitical risk is hugely heightened at the current time. And if you look back at the beginning of this year, and in particular, everyone was talking about, this being a year of elections. Obviously, we still have the big election to go in the US, but people did expect that things calming down, and that what you would have is around the world, as you have elections, you would have new governments, and then it would become settled, and everyone would know what the policies are, because it's obviously the instability that's creating a geopolitical concern with regard to elections. But what you have in fact seen in many places around the world, you've seen the rise of populist parties, often far-right parties. And this has created more instability than you've actually had before an election. So the aftermath of the elections that have already taken place has really left the world in much more uncertainty. So just to give a few examples, I mean, you have India. You assumed, or everyone assumed, that Modi would win with a very, very strong majority. And of course, business was planning what they were doing with India. They had all their plans laid out. But he didn't get such a strong majority, and there are now strong parties in Parliament in India, and companies actually have to consider this in their growth strategies. They have to consider slightly different positions than they had before. The same with South Africa. You know, we thought that the ANC would probably win, or it would be between them and the Democratic Alliance. And then you've got Jacob Zuma coming in, taking 14% of the votes. And there's a coalition which is holding together okay, but it has actually, created instability in South Africa. And in the UK, although, everyone predicted that rightly that there would be a Labour Party, the fact that Reform Party, again, entered into the situation quite near the end, towards the end, and when we're coming up to the UK elections, and they have to be factored into all the policies. And at the moment, I would say there's quite a lot of concern about business, about what Labour's policies are, not just on immigration, but very big concern is about what's going to happen on employment law. This whole package of proposals about make work pay, enhancing employer rights, them rights, unfair dismissal on day one. What will that do for business? So there is uncertainty there. Same across Asia Pacific, got a lot of changes in governments. And if you look in Europe, this new twist of the tail in France, where Macron has just appointed Michel Barnier as the prime minister. I think I was looking yesterday at some polls to say that of the polls yesterday, something like, I think it was, 75, 3/4 of voters in France actually think he'll soon be on his way out. Because obviously he's been picked from a party that doesn't hold a kind of majority in those two elections, the snap elections that we had in France after the European parliamentary elections went towards the right. Macron had that snap election, and now we have this, lot of uncertainty in France. And then, just as a reminder, in Germany, we had regional elections, and in those two states towards the east of Germany, and both of them have gone far right. So altogether, an uncertain landscape for business. Then you put on top of that.
And actually, on Julia, just coming on Germany, of course, they sort of announced the other day that they're talking about closing their borders despite shipping. And immigration seems to be, an election topic everywhere. I mean, even last night in the US, or yesterday evening in the presidential debate, immigration was a major topic of conversation between the candidates.
Yes. So at Fragment, I spent a lot of time maybe doing one client update a day, even with Bo Cooper and Eddie Raleigh from our US, who sit in Washington, are absolute experts in this matter, talking about what would happen if Trump became a president, or Kamala Harris. What the difference in their immigration policies is enormous, and companies have to actually look at potential impacts of that right now and perhaps take action at this stage because the impacts will be so dramatic. So yes, so we have the elections. Then on top of all of the elections, we have the fact that we are seeing more states, more conflicts with sovereign states involved since the 1970s. So obviously we've got the war in the Middle East. We have this continuing situation in Ukraine. So this is causing a lot of geopolitical concern. And then and I know this will be a topic that we'll be discussing later, which will be very interesting, but this is having a big impact on supply chains. So supply chains, really do matter hugely. And how you manage your supply chains means that you're often, you really have to understand the geopolitics of some countries. we were talking earlier, weren't we, about the fact, say, electric vehicles, some of the components of electric vehicles, they're made in certain countries that you wouldn't actually think you'd need to be concerned about, but you do if there is a significant component, and that's part of your supply chain. So all in all, the situation is very challenging. And then on top of that, what we're seeing is this rise back of business travel. We're back to pre-pandemic levels. Again, that's quite an interesting aside, Brian, isn't it? Because do you remember at the start of the COVID pandemic, how we bets on when would we reach that pre-pandemic business travel level? And we were saying, oh, six months. And I thought 6 months. And, I think someone said 18 months and we thought they were ridiculous. And now it's actually been about 3 years. So, but, we're having that, and then everyone's very concerned about costs. So there's, people are very sort of worried because it's a perfect storm, all the geopolitical concerns, wanting to move people, but then, worrying about costs. So, are you moving them compliantly? And then, we have all the politics around China, US, Taiwan, tariffs. So in a summary, really, what I want to say is that it's almost impossible to hold your job doing global mobility if you don't really understand what's happening geopolitically, because it impacts so many immigration policies around the world. It impacts employment policies, and it just impacts your corporate strategy. So that link, I think, between geopolitics and global mobility has really, never been stronger.
Okay, thank you so much for that update, Julia. We're going to carry on with that theme of geopolitics with our guests in a moment. But before we do, we're going to bring onto stage Marie Butler from Wood, who is our Changemaker of the Week, to tell us a bit about her program and her charity and why she likes being a change maker. So everybody, you know how it works. Let's say a big, big thank you to Julia Onslow-Cole, and welcome to the stage Marie Butler in the time-honoured fashion of hitting the heart button, hitting the like button, hitting the applause button, and let's move on to meet Marie Butler. Hi, Marie. Welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Where are you today?
I'm in Houston, Texas.
Cool. So tell us a bit about Wood Group and about your program.
Wood Group is a multinational engineering and consulting business headquartered in Aberdeen. And our mobility program is a host-based model with hubs in Houston, London, and Singapore.
And how many people would you move in a typical year?
So right now, our assignment population, whether that be assignments for expats or cross-border moves, is about 985.
That's a pretty healthy number.
Yeah. It's a good amount, and I am support primarily in the weeds with U.S. and Canada immigration, and between the two, we have about 230 work permits that I manage.
Wow. Okay. So all credit to you for doing that. That's obviously quite a challenge. Now, you're one of our wonderful change makers, and we always try, I think we're sort of around the 200 mark in terms of change makers now. We're always looking for new change makers. So tell us a bit about what you get out of being a change maker. Tell us a bit about that.
I have very much enjoyed the networking. It is, a lot of those of us in mobility are within the same networks or organizations. And it's always nice to have the opportunity to network with your peers and learn what other companies are doing, or talk through how other companies are preparing. For example, the increase in USCIS filing fees.
Okay, and tell us a bit about yourself. How did you get into mobility?
Well, after a long career in teaching of only 3 years, I made my way to HR and started in recruiting. I've been at Wood for a little over 17 years now, and moved over to mobility in 2012, and have had various roles in the mobility space and just have enjoyed it. It's a very, there's always something new to learn and new situations. And throughout that, I've kind of gone into a niche role with immigration.
Cool. Now, one of the things with our change makers obviously help each other by networking, and they help us by giving us sort of insights as we develop new technology features. But we sort of say thank you to our change makers by making a donation to any charity that they choose to nominate. Now, you've chosen a charity called Camp Sweeney, which I know is very dear to your heart. So tell us a bit about Camp Sweeney.
I attended Camp Sweeney as a child. I have had type 1 diabetes for 33 years. And when I was diagnosed, I didn't know anybody that had type 1 diabetes. And Camp Sweeney has been they may have been started in the 50s, very old running camp, but it is a camp for children with type 1 diabetes. And I had the fortune of going because of scholarships. So in addition to the cost of the disease itself and the supplies that go along with it and the medication, a family paying for a child to go to camp for 3 weeks. And at the time, I believe it may have been $3,000+. That's a huge expense. And the camp advertises no child is denied due to financial hardship. And so I have been involved with several organizations that raise money for scholarships for Camp Sweeney. And when I attended, it was my time to just be a kid. Everybody else there had type 1 diabetes, so I wasn't singled out. We were all just kids. And it gave the parents a break, knowing that the child was looked after. And the camp is 3 weeks because it takes 21 days to form a habit. And the lessons that I learned and the education about diabetes itself are still with me.
Wow. Okay. That is absolutely amazing. Marie, it's been wonderful having you as a guest on The View from the Top. Hopefully we'll get you back some other time in the future. We're now going to move on, and we have a Benivo update, a little bit of Benivo news with Matt Cheek. So everybody, you know how it works. Let's say thank you to Marie Butler for giving us her time on the show today and telling us a bit about Wood Group and about herself and about her chosen charity. Let's say thank you to her, and let's welcome to the stage Matt Cheek in the time-honored fashion. Hit the heart button, hit the like button, hit the applause button, and let's bring onto stage Matthew Cheek. Matt,
hello,
how
Brian.
are you doing? It's expat Matt.
That's right.
So
you caught me again.
Absolutely, always good to see you, Matt. So, what's news?
All right, I am here to let everybody know about a very exciting event that Benivo is doing at the GWS conference on the 22nd to 25th of October, the one that I'm sure a lot of the audience is planning to attend.
Absolutely. Big applause to ERC. We're
applause to
looking forward
ERC.
to the event. Absolutely.
Absolutely. So we're one of the fortunate participants who are getting to present at ERC. Very excited about that. And the presentation that we are doing is on 10 ways to use AI and GPT to become a better mobility leader today. And this couldn't be a more in the moment topic. And we're doing it with together with a client who is quite committed to the future of AI generally in HR at their organization and as applied to global mobility. So for everybody who is planning to attend ERC, please track down the Benivo presentation for 10 ways to use AI and GPT to become a better mobility leader.
I see Mark Birchall is in the audience, so he says thank you on behalf of Worldwide ERC. Mark, can we just say thank you to you for all the time you put in and all the great work you do for Worldwide ERC itself. You are a hero, Mark Birchall, for all the work you do for Worldwide ERC and everybody else that volunteers for them. And we look forward to seeing you there. So Matt, thank you so much for that. You said this is a presentation we're doing with a client.
Yes, indeed.
But the name of the client,
which is already published. So it's Nitsan, the CEO of Benivo, is going to be presenting with Pradeep Settler, Vice President of Global Mobility at Capgemini. So tell a very interesting story. We're going to cover a ton of focus areas, and hope you all can attend. It's in, looking at the countdown timer, 43 days, 23 hours, and exactly 17 minutes from right now.
and if you want a sneak peek, then Pradeep will actually be on the show next week too. So we'll be seeing him then. So anyway, we're going to move on. We've got so much to talk about now. So let's hit the heart button, hit the like button, hit the applause button as we say cheerio to Matt Cheek, and we welcome onto our stage Marcel, Mulderij and Pauline Collins from Voerman Group, and indeed Amir Pintow from Benivo. Hi, Pauline. Hi, Marcel. Hi, Amir.
Hello, hello.
Hi, Brian.
Hello.
So, I would say, am I excited? I mean, excited is probably not the right word. This is it's a somber day, but it's such an important discussion we're going to be having today that I am excited about it. But I'm excited because it's so relevant to everything we do. But before we get into that, for those who don't know Voerman, Pauline, maybe tell us a bit about Voerman and your role.
Okay, so Voerman, the group of companies are have a global footprint. We're headquartered in The Hague, which is where we run our DSP, relocation, logistics, and international moving services. But we're also in Prague, we're in Africa, in Asia. So we provide the whole suite of services for relocation, from supporting people with home searches and school searches to the full relocation package and moving. In addition to that, we're also a big logistics company, and so that's us. My role within the Voerman Group is partner relations, but like so many people, the role has creep, so I do account management as well, and I'm also responsible for reading and putting together our industry update, which is what we're here to talk about today.
Okay, and Marcel, tell us about your role at Voerman.
Well, first of all, Brian, thank you for being on the show. I think it's a great opportunity for us as Voerman. My role, account manager, and therefore in my role working close with Benivo and Amir and his team.
Cool. Okay, and yeah, I mean, you mentioned Amir. So, Amir, I know that Voerman is a very dear supply chain partner of Benivo's. So tell us a bit about that, Amir. Tell us about what you look for in a supply chain partner.
Okay, great. So first of all, as I've mentioned, thank you everyone for tuning for the show. Cool. So I'll explain a little bit about maybe what we found, what we were looking for before we came to partner with Voerman. So household good is I think everybody here knows is known to create high stress levels and costs in the industry. We don't know when things are coming, if they'll come, in what shape they'll come. So we really wanted to add to our network of suppliers a company which we can see as a partner, right? And the end result is that we did, which is nice. So because of Benivo's unique characteristics, which we are tech first, we wanted to find a vendor which is first of all had a reputation for quality, and the second that is in the forefront of technology, sustainability, and through them what we want together to increase the employees' experience. So we were looking in the global network. And that's how we found the Voerman. What was important for us mainly is, first of all, for Benivo that will have the capabilities as a traditional RMC, a relocation company. We wanted to have a vendor that will be very agile. Will think first about the clients, that will put the client first in terms of how we partner, if it's directly connected or through Benivo. And it was very important for us that the partner will also appreciate transparency, and how they share information with the clients. And with Voerman, we found all of these three principles met. So I think that's how the partnership started, and it's going very well.
Okay, and we'll get into a bit. I want to get into the industry updates and what's going on in a second. But Marcel, just from your perspective, what were you looking for in terms of becoming a supply chain partner?
Well, I think first when we had the first meetings with Amir, and Amir explaining what Benivo is and how they are, I think, changing the mobility industry with using technology and AI with serving their clients. I think for Voerman, I think there was a perfect fit because we as Voerman, I think Amir mentioned already, we develop our own technology. We are implementing technology into our operations. And we are also constantly looking how we can use technology in moving our industry, forward.
Okay, well, we're going to get back into technology in a moment, but let's just move on. Pauline, you guys do an industry update, which, if out there in the audience land, if you haven't subscribed, I would recommend subscribing, because you're always full of nuggets of information about what's going on in the world. So Pauline, tell us a bit about that industry update.
So we started the industry update during the pandemic, and it was a means of communicating with our corporate clients, with our partners, with assignees, how what was happening in the world was going to impact the relocation that they were taking, either booking with us or going through the process. And so we continued it through the pandemic. It helped us to manage expectations. It helped us to educate not just our clients, but also internally. And then we continued it through all of the situations we've seen in the geopolitical climate, the Russian-Ukraine conflict, the issues in the Red Sea. So for us, it was just a really important way of managing expectations and making sure that people connected what they saw in the news cycles with what was happening to them in their lives.
Yeah, because we watch the news cycle and we see the Houthis have attacked another ship in the Red Sea. Mm-hmm. But what does that actually mean for my container that's moving somewhere? What's that sort of? So one of the questions that I asked, and I'd be interested in your views, is there are these ramifications of geopolitical events, and which is giving people most operational and practical concerns in the day-to-day role? I'll ask the audience that question. I'll give you 4 choices out in the audience. I'll give you delays in shipping lanes, rising costs, concerns re personal security, or concerns re cyber security. So out in our audience, what ramification of worldwide events is giving you the most operational and practical concerns on a day-to-day basis? And Marcel, perhaps, from your perspective, what are the things that, if you were to rank those, which are the biggest issues at the moment?
Well, I think you mentioned the Red Sea crisis now with the Houthi attacks. I think the main thing is costs going up from the sea freight, delays in containers because we have to take alternative routes. So I think delays, so operational wise and cost, I think that's the main concern at the moment.
Okay, and what do you see? Stephen says rising costs. Stephen Holmesy says rising costs. What are you seeing, Pauline?
Yeah, no, I think probably delays in shipping lanes and rising costs are a concern across the relocation sectors, from corporate clients, large or small, and also to private individuals that are moving. So I think in order to justify those rising costs, you have to be able to explain to your client base why those costs are increasing and what the impact is. I think people are very quick to think maybe it's just opportunist when costs are going up. But actually, I think I learned during the Ukraine crisis that the Ukraine is the biggest supplier of lumber in the world. So when there was the conflict started, suddenly there was a shortage of timber. So we couldn't make crates, paper was an issue. So all of the costs of those types of materials increased, which has a direct impact on the relocation costs for moving somebody. But before that, I had no idea that the Ukraine generated such a large quantity of lumber of timber for the world. So that was associating something that's happening with what's happening with me in my day-to-day working life.
Yeah, I mean, costs is a big one. I mean, actually, I'll tell you what the audience said here when we went out for a poll on it. I found slightly surprising. Delays in shipping was only 5%. People said that was their biggest concern. I mean, the biggest one was, as we talked about here, rising costs. 2/3 of everybody who responded said that was their biggest concern. Concerns re personal security, 17%, and then we'll get onto this, concerns re cybersecurity, 12%. They seem to be the order. You mentioned this question of the cost of timber and therefore the cost of cardboard and paper and crates. I mean, that is a huge thing. And the other thing, I suppose, that came out of the way the world changed post-COVID is the growth of online delivery and Amazon and what have you, which again all pushed up the price of cardboard because Amazon is the largest buyer of cardboard in the world now. Exactly. And that is all. So the way the world has changed, if you like, at the top level, comes through to us in our everyday level, because it means that cardboard is that much harder for the shippers and the household goods companies to buy. Which in turn means that prices are going up.
It was also interesting, Brian, to see that the poll that shipping lanes was a very small percentage, because that has a huge direct impact on the rising costs as well. If the shipping lanes are congested or there's port strikes and you have to find alternative routing, then that adds considerably to the relocation cost of moving somebody from A to Z.
And let's talk about that a bit at the moment. What's been going on at the moment in terms of shipping lanes? I mean, I think we all know about what's going on has been going on in the Red Sea. What about other areas? Let's talk about some of the port strikes, things that have been going on.
Yeah, well, I think, Julia mentioned in her segment about the political landscape and particularly highlighted Germany. In Germany, for example, we're seeing port strikes, we have consistently been seeing port strikes over the last year. But, in the news at the moment, there are port strikes in Hamburg, and I think they're coming to the end of the negotiations and reaching a settlement. But, just last weekend, the port strikes had shut out all of train activity going in. So if the trains can't get onto the port with the containers, then it delays the vessels. So it could mean vessels have to depart because they obviously have a schedule to keep, which then means that shipments are shut out and rolled to the next vessel, which then makes capacity an issue on the next vessel. So, what we see in terms of strikes and congestion incurs costs in terms of rental at the ports, rental costs for the container, perhaps extra warehousing. And then from the relocation side of things, if containers or shipping is delayed, that has a knock-on impact on the relocation sector, particularly for temporary housing, because if people are not receiving their shipments within the normal time frame, all of those arrangements that have been put in place for temporary housing is extended because they can't move into their permanent residence. So then you have capacity issues with housing, because that sort of normal cycle of people moving in and moving out is restricted. So you talk about a port strike, but it impacts so much of what we do in the relocation industry.
It's like that old thing about a butterfly flapping its wings in the rainforest in Brazil or something, and the impact on the rest of the world. That one sort of fairly minor event, in this case, a port strike in Hamburg, somehow affects us all over the world. Let's just go back to the Red Sea, because Amir, we were talking earlier, I mean, a huge percentage of the world's trade goes through the Red Sea. And what's happening? How are people, Amir or Marcel, how are people rerouting? What's happening to shipping that was going through the Red Sea?
I can start. What we see is vessels, they take a different route. They go via the Cape of Good Hope. They use maybe change to larger air shipments, which of course also will raise the costs. You see now a change in the supply chain that not really common in household goods moving in sea yet, but the Silk Route from China to Europe by train. So we see those changes.
I think,
and it's not. Oh, sorry, Amir, go ahead.
Amir first, then Pauline. Amir.
Yeah, I would just say we were talking before, but it's around, I think around 10% of all of the volume goes through in the world goes through the Red Sea, right? So it's a massive volume coming from mainly Asia into Europe, and I think Pauline mentioned some of the whiplash effect of supply chain, right, on global mobility. You mentioned the more the strain over temp accommodation, or maybe even furniture rental, right? That we'll have here. But one of the things that we're also seeing is also how the industry changes a little bit, right? So, for example, destinations in Ukraine or in Israel that the DSPs that used to provide service over there are evolving now. They're actually working more on how to actually move people away to find them destinations, or working remotely from other destinations in Europe for these countries. So it's interesting to see how the industry, and Brian mentioned like the butterfly effect, but how it affects everything.
Yeah, because a lot of people who maybe had operations have moved them, or are moving people to a nearby country that isn't having those same challenges. So maybe a Cyprus or somewhere in Eastern Europe or whatever. So we're getting that. And also we talked about the Red Sea, we're getting the delays, and that can easily add a couple of weeks to the time of a shipment. So what's this all meaning? If we sort of put it all together, what are we seeing in terms of the pricing of containers and shipments? So, you know, if a container cost 100 this time last year or 2 years ago, what's it likely to be now? What sort of increases in container pricing are we seeing?
Well, we saw extreme increases of container pricing during the COVID, during the pandemic. You know, we saw situations, particularly out of Asia, where costs were increasing by 60, 70%. So, you know, suddenly it was maybe $2,000 to move a 20-foot container. It was then costing, you know, $8,000, $9,000. And then as capacity was reduced, the pricing was going up. There were less vessels sailing, so there was a reduction in availability. So, you know, supply and demand, the pricing went up. We did see some stabilization after COVID, and at the moment now it's really hard to sort of put a number on it, because it changes depending on what's going on in the news cycle. We see shipping lines are increasing GRI. So rather than putting in sort of rate increases on it. They put a general rate increase on a traffic lane. So we have just seen a general rate increase, which came into effect at the beginning of September from Europe to North America. And, that's just the shipping line saying it's an extra 20% on a freight. So when you're trying to talk to your clients about managing costs, it's very hard to quantify that for them, because it really depends what's coming in at last minute notice. So rates that we provide on Monday at the beginning of August may not be really in effect or valid at mid-month. So it's a really evolving cycle, which is where something like an industry update is really important, that we keep managing our clients' expectations and educating them, so that when we have to go back and say, actually, there is a freight increase and the costs are going up, they understand why, because they have seen it in our update. Marcel, you want to add?
Sorry,
I wanted to add, and even during the transit time, we can you face with extra surcharges if they choose to take an alternative route. You have fuel charges. If there's a congestion in a port, you have congestion charges. So even during the transit time, the freight price will go up.
So the freight costs have always got those clever words in them that say, extraordinary situations, we can put the prices up, and we see that in a lot of industries. But I mean, it raises an interesting question, I suppose, is that whose cost is it? And let me just explain what I mean by that. That, let's say costs go up by 20%. Who's going to bear that cost? Is the shipping company going to turn around and say, well, we've got to bear it and we'll just have to absorb it and we get lower profit? No, I can see you shaking your head. Or if it goes to the company, then is it the company that has to pay it? Or actually, is it the employee that has to pay it because their allowance has stayed the same, but they've just got less? I mean, it's a bit like, I suppose the analogy is with pensions, when people move from defined benefit to defined contribution, that what you're saying is that the cost is not the employers, it could be the employees. So I mean, is any of this driving a move from companies to change their policies to say, actually, our policy no longer is that you get, say, whatever, a 20-foot container, a 40-foot container, but the policy is you get an allowance of X, Y, or Z on the basis that, in that case, if there is volatility in price, it's not affecting the employer, it's affecting the employee and what they have to use their money on. Have we seen any changes of policy as a result of the volatility in pricing?
I think, yes, we have seen changes in policies. I know a lot of corporate clients are reviewing their policies at the moment, and some of those are looking at maybe changing how they send people overseas. So perhaps sending people on extended business trips rather than relocating. They're looking at, do employees need an air freight as well as a sea freight? And that's where we as a moving company also play a part, because we do have a responsibility for helping our clients managing their relocation budget. So if we see an employee who has an allowance of a container and an air freight, but their air freight is just going to go into store at destination till their sea freight arrives, we counsel them on the fact that if there's no benefit to them, then there is no point in having that air freight. Take an extra suitcase on the flight with you. So I think everybody has a responsibility for making sure that we do manage costs for our clients. We don't want people to reduce allowance, because obviously it impacts what we do day to day, but we have to be agile. And I think Amir mentioned agility and why Voerman was selected as a partner, but we have to think outside the box as well and look at different solutions. We have a client where we move a number of their employees on one traffic lane, and historically we may have shipped everything in independent containers. Now we're looking at, can we consolidate a number of employee shipments together, which is reducing the cost for the employer, and may not inconvenience the employee that much in terms of transit time, because we're managing expectations. So at the end of the day, increased costs are going to be passed through to the consumer. And that generally is the client, but it is, and that's why it's really important that we manage expectations of that client to understand why those costs are increasing.
And how do we use that also, or presumably we have to use that also, to manage the expectations of the employee in terms of when their shipment might actually turn up. So because they might have thought that it will take 3 weeks when actually it's going to take 2 months because of rerouting. I mean, is that something that we actively update and counsel people on in terms of managing the expectations of how long it's going to take to get from location A to location B? Marcel?
Yes, we do. We can track shipments. Usually it's not really up to date, but we do update our transferees and our corporate clients during the transit time when the shipment will arrive. We do see now technology being changed in the shipping industry. For example, we add trackers to containers, so we have 24 hours visibility when a container will arrive at destination, so we can plan our cruise in advance. We know when we have to, maybe when there's delay, extend the temporary accommodation, or when we have to cancel the temporary accommodation.
I must admit, if I was moving, I think that one of the first things I would do was put a couple of air tags in my luggage that was going into my stuff that was going into the containers, so I could actually personally just keep a note on where it is. I don't know how many people do that these days, but I just thought that sort of instant tracking, the technology is there. I mean, what are you seeing in terms of tracking for technology?
So we're seeing a number of companies that are offering these services to complement to other services, similar to insurance, etc. But I do think that we're seeing a lot of technological developments are happening in this field of household goods. Apart from that, one of the things that I saw interesting is the virtual surveys that are coming in right now. In the past, I think everybody here in the industry knows that someone used to come to your house and do like an awkward walk around your house where they look at your books, your closets, which could be uncomfortable. But today, what we're seeing is a technological advancement where using AI after hours or early in the morning, whenever you want to do it, you do your own survey, and we're seeing more and more clients and moving companies that are making this mandatory for all of these moves. And I don't know if Marcel, have you seen any other technological advancements in this field? But definitely, I can see this. A lot of changes are happening.
I think that's the biggest change over the last year, and especially COVID, I think, pushed it forward. And indeed, the technology, the use of technology, because we couldn't go to the client's home, so we had to use video surveys. And following up on that, yes, then now we see the digital inventories at a destination. They can work in our software to have the delivery, so we can see once the delivery is finished, we see immediately how many items is it everything signed. Also after packing, we see immediately the volume. So yes, we do see that, Amir.
Yeah, so that's interesting. So that's also changing the way that we work. I mean, the other thing that came up in the survey, I just want to touch on now, is this whole question of cybersecurity, because there are bad players out there, whether the bad players are individual gangs or rogue states or what have you, but there are bad players out there who are causing damage to the world and to our lives. But from our perspective, what can we use in terms of cybersecurity? And maybe you can talk about this, Amir, from a Benivo perspective. What can we put in there to protect the end users by using cybersecurity technology?
Yeah, I think first of all, it's something that comes up very often in the last year, and we see more and more of our clients talk with us about it. They ask what measures do we employ, and I'll cover now just a couple. But at Benivo, it's one of the things we are proud of the most is our data security team. And the work that they're doing, all right. So I just want to give them a lot of respect. So first of all, what we do is that we only share specific information that is relevant to the vendor. So if we're talking about initiation to household goods, we don't only share the information that the household goods require, similar to other vendors that we employ. And even then, if this information, it's been scrutinized to the bare minimum, right? To have for the vendor to start working. We mask our emails. So this is a technology you've probably seen with Uber or any other, maybe your food delivery app, right? So you can contact or chat with with the actual person dealing with your request, but they are but it's masked, right? You're not using their real email. It keeps making sure that the person email, the employee email, is secured. And of course, in part of the onboarding process, and I'm sure Marcel can share his war stories for when we onboarded Voerman into Benivo, we do a lot of data security checks. We are being very, very selective of the type of organization that we work with. And this is probably an advice I could give to everyone on this call, because only when you start scrutinizing and checking, you can see the vendors that you work with to see how they manage their data and the level of their professionalism in this aspect. Then you can see how probably the relationship will go through, in the foreseeable future. So, if Marcel wants to touch a bit more about this, but maybe your experience, if onboarding to Benivo, it would be very good.
Well, onboarding indeed. I think the longest process was indeed the whole process going through the whole data protection, data security part. Indeed, I think that was the biggest part of the implementing us as a supplier. But now working with Benivo, working with the platform, every communication goes via the platform. We not share anything by email anymore, and especially the master emails. I think that was new. I've never seen it in our industry before, using vendors using it, partners using it, or accounts using it. We had to get used to it, but now I think it works perfect. We see the clients are happy with it, the corporates are happy with it, and now move managers also really see the advantage of it, using it.
Okay, and my gut feeling is that this is not going to get easier. I mean, the world is getting more complicated, more volatile, more dangerous. And whether we're talking about the physical relocation, we haven't really talked about personal security, cyber security, costs, insurance premiums, everything is getting a little bit more complex than it was. Pauline, just as we come towards the close, just tell us a bit more about the industry update and how people can get hold of it and when your next issue is out.
So we send the issue out at the end of each month. It depending on where it falls for a weekend, it could be the end of the month or the beginning of the following month. We have a subscription service on LinkedIn, so you can subscribe to the newsletter on LinkedIn. We have a normal email distribution list, but I think LinkedIn is probably the best method to subscribe. When we started, when we were just sending out by email to our partners and clients on internal mailing lists, and then I think about a year ago, started uploading it to LinkedIn. Immediately, I think we had 200, 300 subscribers, and we're now over 1,000 subscribers. So it's no pressure on me to write every month, but but it is, it just goes to show that there is an interest there. And what we're doing is, we're not breaking new ground, but what we're trying to do is identify what we're seeing in news cycles that will impact our readers. And it's just more about giving the people to opportunity to understand that what we're seeing in the news is a direct impact on relocation services.
Pauline,
so yeah,
actually, kudos to you, Pauline, with everything you do. We are actually getting towards the end of our show now, so I'm going to bring back onto stage our regular guest, Julia Onslow Cole, our change maker, Marie Butler, Matt Cheek, if he's there. Yep, we got Matt, and of course our wonderful producer, Tally. So we're all on stage, all 8 of us. It's been an amazing show talking about such an important subject, the geopolitics of global mobility. We are back next week with Pradeep Settler from Capgemini, when we're going to be talking about how they transform their policy with a wonderful episode called That Was Then, This Is Now. So everybody, this has been The View from the Top. We hope you've enjoyed the show as much as we have enjoyed presenting it. Take care, everybody, and have a great, great week. Goodbye, and have a great week, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you.